Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Better Basics Podcast, the realest fitness podcast on the planet. So real, in fact, if you're watching on video right now, you might notice that Dylan is horizontal in this episode. He's laying down, not because he's tired. Dylan, how you doing over there, man?
I'm hurting a little bit. I'm in this position for now. There's a chance I'll if you're watching, I'll move a time or two just to get comfortable. But I did not take any of my own advice, and my ego got in the way. We've referenced on the pod previously that on Thanksgiving I was gonna attempt a 1-rep max on my squat, my deadlift, and my bench. And I had a goal of 1,000 total pounds, and it actually went quite well, but I had been sick for the 2 weeks prior to attempting this ambition, and didn't really get to prep for it much. So I had been doing a lot of safer training, high rep, low weight, more hypertrophy focused stuff, and I probably knew better. I knew going in, like I wasn't as prepared as I needed to be, but felt like I had the experience and miles underneath my belt to give it a go. And my lifts were great. And I did notice in the squat a bit of a pinch, I would say, in my lower back. And it bothered me a little, but it didn't feel, I've had worse injuries in the moment. So I thought I kind of got away with it. And that was Thursday. Thursday night I was fine. Friday I was fine. Saturday I woke up, and this spot where I felt the pinch was on fire. Like just completely debilitating, like difficult to walk, move, constant pain, nothing I could do about it. So yeah, it's been a rough 48 hours for me, and I'm again learning a lesson that I've learned before, to get the ego out of the gym, and I think we're gonna get into some of that. I think this has sort of been a catalyst for a conversation that we're gonna have today.
Yeah, I mean, you're just setting up the main course for the podcast today, but we can talk more about that later. I mean, first off, I'm happy that the lifts went well. You know, your numbers were good. You sent them over to me, but it is, this is just abundantly clear. And I mean, I guess I'll ask you, was it worth it?
I've actually been thinking about that. I love the
Okay.
I love the idea of it. I love the tradition in it. And I think a lot of the risk came in for me with the squat. I just had never really squatted with that much weight on my back. And you can get away with a, 1, 5, 10%, error in your squat form when you're doing lighter weight. But when you're at your max weight and you're squatting with that load on your back, all the pressure on your spine and into your hips, I mean, 1 degree of variation. Like I probably, it felt like a good squat. I moved the weight very well. But 1 little shift in the pelvis, 1 little wink in the butt, and I'm paying for it. So to answer your question, what I said to Matt when we did this was, I don't know if I ever need to squat more than that again in my life. I do feel like had I been prepping for it for a few weeks like I'd planned to do, that it probably would have gone better had I worked my way up some. But I don't know, man. It's tough. Trying to kind of navigate how we do this in the future, because I do think it's a fun tradition. Gets us together, point in time. We wrote it on in chalk on the brick wall in my basement. So it's fun, but I got to be better prepared next time.
Well, I've got a couple pieces of, I mean, advice or just like things that I've been thinking about too. One, and this is the biggest one, is nobody should be maxing out cold. And that's not to say you didn't warm up the day of, but like that's something that requires preparation. something that
No doubt.
requires a big runway, just to prep the central nervous system in your body for those moves. And so, yeah, I guess like that's step one is, giving yourself a longer runway. But the other thing, and this is something that we always used to do back in football, was we would rarely do like traditional 1 rep maxes. Sometimes you would, but for the most part, when we had our max out days, and we do it like twice a year, I feel like, our maxes would be calculated based on, we would just build up to a heavy anywhere between like 2 to 5 reps, and then you would calculate your max based off of like your 2 rep max, 3 rep max, 4 rep max, whatever. So you would just find a heavy top weight that you could do in the 2 to 5 rep range, and then you would calculate your 1 rep max from that.
Yeah, both good points. I knew going in that this was a risk, and I do feel like had I not hurt myself, I would have been getting away with something. And when I had just a tiny pinch, I sort of thought I did. I carried a Christmas tree out of the woods for my brother on Friday, and I'm wondering if that
Exacerbated it for sure.
Sort of did me in for good. But yeah, I don't know. It's a battle with the ego for sure. Like I've used 1 rep max calculators. If I were to do four to failure, I'm not so sure that the risk would be fully mitigated anyways. Like if I'm pushing that 4th rep with relatively heavy weight,
Yeah, it's
close to
still like a
failure.
max at the end of the day. It's still like
Right.
max exertion.
So for me, I think it's just really about that prep, to your point. Like, and a lot of it, I think, is the core. Like the muscles around the core just hadn't really been trained in that way, hadn't worked up to the load that would be required. The other component of it that I've been thinking about is I deadlifted 430 pounds right before
Before that. Yeah.
right before I maxed my
Yeah.
squat. So that that probably had me a bit compromised as well. And I did 400 right before 430. So there's a number of factors here I have to consider moving forward, but figuring out how to do it more safely next year. And if for whatever reason I get hit with a cold and can't train for the 2 weeks prior, to your point, like I'm gonna have to figure out a different way to approach it, because it's just way too risky. So maybe not worth it. Maybe I have to reconsider.
Maybe a new tradition. But anyways. All right. Let's move on. We'll get back into this later. So but you just get comfortable. What we're going to start the episode off with is our hot topic. And this hot topic comes from an old Men's Health article titled "What You Should Know About the Potato Diet." It is a story from a guy named Andrew Filnders Taylor, who lost 117 pounds in a little less than a year because he just ate potatoes.
Yeah, I love this article. I think there's so many interesting little nuggets in it we can discuss. This dude just ate potatoes. Like he put a little bit of calorie-free sauce on them, but beyond that, I mean, it was just different types of potatoes, regular potatoes, sweet potatoes, you name it, boiled, roasted, mashed, but literally 3 meals a day for almost a year. The only thing he ate was potatoes, which is just crazy to think about. A
The
diet
discipline.
the discipline in that is insane. Like that sounds I don't know how I'd ever look at a potato again in my life had I done that.
Dude, how many days do you think you could go with just eating potatoes?
Like
I don't
just
even know if
potatoes and
days is the
nothing else?
I don't even know if days is the right way to quantify it. How many meals?
Yeah, but I could maybe do a day. I'd hate the third meal.
I don't even know if I could but
yeah.
what would even be like how would you even keep it interesting? I mean, I know that you can do potatoes 1,000 different ways, but by the third meal, you're going to be like, get me something different here. Give me some protein.
Yeah. Well, and your body to a point at some point would likely be craving those things as well. I mean, potatoes are super healthy. Potatoes are badass. I want to talk about that a little bit, but I
Hmm.
mean, no meat, and very little protein in a potato, right? So the article does talk about how he did some supplementation of vitamin B12 because of the lack of protein and meat in the diet, but to me that feels relatively insufficient. I mean, meat is so nutrient packed. It's a top source of vitamin D, iodine, zinc, calcium, omega 3s, and the fats that come with the meat. So, I mean, there's just so many nutrients that are lacking. Potatoes are great. You know, they're a great source of fiber. They're a healthy source of carbohydrate. They're rich in potassium and vitamin C. Sweet potatoes will have some vitamin A. But beyond that, I mean, all of the other things that's required to feel good. So not only would you just be sick of potatoes, but you'd have to imagine that you're not feeling your best. The thing in this that may have counteracted some of that is this dude was relatively overweight. So
Right.
anything that was going to help him lose that amount of weight probably had him feeling a whole lot better.
Yeah, he was 334 pounds when, he started this, crazy journey. And the thing that I think is really interesting is there's a quote from him here where basically he said, oh, here it is. Yeah, it was intended to be a short term intervention to treat my own food addiction, Taylor said. My behavior with food mirrored that of an alcoholic with drinking, so I decided to get as close to possible to treating it with the same abstinence model. I quit all food except potatoes. I mean, like that is it right there, that he obviously like had a problem, and the only way he knew how to quit that problem was to go to the extreme. And so, he chose eating only potatoes as his abstinence. And definitely, I'm sure there were some negative side effects, but the I think the big point here is that he found something that worked for him.
Yeah, you bet. That really is the point. I don't think this would work for most people. Um, and he did. I mean, it talks about how he checked in regularly with his doctor. He had a registered dietitian kind of facilitating the journey. So, he was ensuring that this wasn't having some significant negative health consequences. But I think for most people, it may, if you don't have the resources to be checking in frequently with professionals to kind of monitor and maintain this. What he did here is he figured out a way that worked for him to get into a calorie deficit. And at the
Yeah,
end of the day,
exactly.
like any any diet or any means of eating that's going to put you in a calorie deficit is going to help you lose weight. This isn't some magic like just eat potatoes to lose weight formula. All he did was eat a lot less than he was before, and potatoes was his way of doing that. But I think it's kind of a crazy approach. He said he has a quote. He says, "Make your food boring and your life interesting." If that works for him, fine. I hate that.
Yeah,
Like
I hate it. I hate it so much.
food should not be boring. Food is awesome. It's a joy. It's a amazing component of our lives that we should not only be using for nutrition but for pleasure to some degree. And so I'm not a huge fan of the approach. What I will say is potatoes, like outside the scope of just eating potatoes, potatoes are super healthy and in fact can be leveraged in your diet to help you lose weight for a couple of reasons. One, there's this thing called the satiety index. It was a study that was done on ranking 38 different foods on how full they made you. And boiled potatoes, not fried like French fries, scored the highest at like 323 points. So out of the 38 foods they studied, potatoes had higher satiety than any other food. White bread was the worst in that study. The other interesting thing about potatoes is they have an appetite suppressing protein in them. So they're not super high in protein, but one of the proteins they do have is called it's like protease inhibitor 2 or something. Just essentially helps suppress that appetite. So that may be a component of that satiety index score. So potatoes as a component of your diet are great. Like it's hard to eat a lot of them. They're incredibly filling, and for those reasons, and they are nutritious. So for those reasons, they're a super healthy source of carbohydrates in your diet.
Yeah, and I mean, I think so one agreed, but like a big point here is how you are serving those potatoes, how you're eating them, because we know that two of the most delicious ways to eat potatoes, chip and fry form,
Yeah.
are not satiating
Now
and
we're talking
not
about.
going to be all that beneficial here. So I mean, this unfortunately, for someone who loves potato chips and French fries, this is not carte blanche to make those staples in my diet. It's important to know that how you are serving them is very important. But yeah, like there's a ton of benefits from eating potatoes. Also, just from a sustaining carbs perspective. I mean, this is something that can really be just converted into good energy for your body. But then really, when I think about the all potato diet, this is just, it kind of reminds me of like the carnivore diet, in a sense where, of course, it's going to be easy to eat in a calorie deficit if you're just eating the same thing over and over again. Your body is going to, your body and mind are going to get tired of eating the same thing over and over again, and so it's not going to ask for it as much. So I think you do a really smart thing by keeping, like you said, keeping food boring. However, unless you have a major health problem requiring this type of intervention, it's not sustainable, and it just seems like a truly awful way to live your life.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Make your food fun and healthy. Like, um,
Yeah,
this
there's so
isn't
many
the
good
way for it.
options.
There are. Yeah, I think if most people tried this to the point you made before, you'd get 3 to 6 meals in, and you'd be in a Wendy's drive-through ordering a Baconator because it would it would suck so bad. You'd just totally, to his alcohol metaphor, you'd relapse hard. I would.
For sure. But I mean, credit to Andrew, because it sounds like not only did he make this happen and make this epic change. He lost what 117 pounds in just under a year. But he also, it sounds like he landed the plane and is
He did.
now eating regular foods again. Mostly it sounds like now his diet is still very like unprocessed and mainly plant based. But and the crazy thing is he still eats a lot of potatoes,
Yeah,
which
that's
to your
crazy.
point earlier is wild, because after this I feel like you wouldn't want to look at another potato ever again for the rest of your life. But yeah, good for Andrew. And this was, I think, the video. Yeah, he posted a video on YouTube back in December of 2016, so almost 2017. I would be really curious to see if we can find a follow up. Maybe we'll have to do a little research and see if we
Yeah,
can find anything about how Andrew is doing now. Nearly like 8 years later.
yeah, be very interesting.
For sure. All right, let's move on to the worth it segment. This is something that we both have. I actually have a couple different versions of this product in my house. It is the doorway pull up bar. Now, I got my first doorway pull up bar. It was a Gold's Gym doorway pull up bar. It was probably in 2018, I want to say. And I got it for like $20. And at that point in time, I couldn't do a pull up at all. Not a single pull up. And just by with making no other changes, just putting that pull up bar in the doorway to my bedroom, within a handful of months, I was able to do a 10 body weight pull-ups. It really is a profound product that, if actually like used properly and not just hidden in a closet or down in your basement, can massively change your health and strength.
Yeah, I'm an owner of one as well. And when you brought up this idea, I started thinking about whether or not it was worth it. And I struggle to think of another thing that you can spend $20 or less on, use literally every single day, and get this kind of benefit out of. Like there are few things is worth it in my life. It sounds silly, but as an at home doorway pull up bar, like if you're a busy person, you got kids, you can't figure out how to incorporate strength training into your life, get a doorway pull up bar and just do what you did. Like just work on pull ups. If you can't do one, hang from it for a period of time. The next time you walk past that pull up bar, try to hang a little longer till you can do a few partials, till you can do a pull up, till you can do 10. That will transform your strength, like in a significant way. So if you're one of those people who's like, I want to get into strength training, I don't have the time, can't afford the gym membership, whatever it is, get a $20 doorway pull-up bar and just start working on pull-ups.
Yeah, I mean, it's super simple. And like you said, if you can't do pull-ups, you can do negatives. You can jump up and put your chin above the bar and then, slowly release yourself down. You can use a chair if you can't even jump up there, and you can slowly release yourself down. You can use resistance bands. I mean, you can just hang. You can do, you can do just partial reps. I mean, there are so many things that are that can be done with the pull-up bar. And if I had to pick just one upper body strength training exercise to do, I can't think of something that I would pick before the pull-up.
Yeah, totally. Like do some pull-ups, do some push-ups. Like you can
Pretty
do pull-ups
simple.
and push-ups for the rest of your life and pretty much hit everything you'd need to in the upper body as far as strength training is concerned. So if that's all you're willing to do, have the time to do, want to do, perfect place to start and perfect place to stay if that's what's right for you.
Yeah, and now the one thing the problem that I came across with when I moved was that the house that I moved into was an older house and it had really wide doorways, and so the Gold's Gym pull-up bar that I had no longer fit into the doorways. So I found a product that was adjustable. These basically like clamps with individual like rings in the middle that worked for those wider doorways. So even if you have if a traditional like cheap pull-up bar isn't going to do the job, there are opportunities. There are different things, different products, and maybe you have to spend a little bit more money than like $25 to get it, but it's not that much more. And I think that, like you said, I can't think of a product that has gotten a bigger return on its investment than a pull-up bar, than a doorway pull-up bar. So I think without a doubt, we can both say that this product is worth it.
Worth it.
Cool. All right, let's move on to the main course. We already kind of highlighted the topic that we're going to be getting into today. It's what to do when you get hurt. Now, Dylan has already shared his story about maxing out. And what exactly, I mean, when you at first you thought it was muscular, but now that you've been sitting with it a little while, it sounds like it's more joint pain. So I mean, you told us what happened. I mean, obviously, like you are horizontal right now, so you can't be feeling too great. But what is, I guess, like where I want to start is, just talking about, how you're feeling. And I would imagine, it's frustrated. But I mean, what do you think? Like, what's kind of going through your head at this point?
Yeah, a lot of frustration, a little bit embarrassed, um, and very insufficient. Like, it's been so debilitating that it's difficult for me to like get down on the floor with my kid and change his diaper. So I haven't been able to show up like I should be and need to be for my family. Like that's how hurt I am. So, um, it's really been difficult on me. At first, I thought it was like a piriformis or QL sort of a deal. I had done something like this once previously where I got too ambitious with a deadlift, and that time felt like an almost may have hurt a pop in the lower back. And that was incredibly painful and debilitating as well. It was days before my bachelor party and kind of ruined that whole event for me. And I learned a ton from that. I haven't done anything like that since. That was very, transformational for the way I thought about lifting weights and those upper kind of weight limits and how I'd approach those things. And have done a good job of taking those lessons and applying them until Thanksgiving morning. So yeah, man, it's tough. Like it's a lot of pain. I I cried because of pain for the first time since probably like grade school. Like that's how painful this was this morning when I got out of bed. Like, and some of it was just like the embarrassment and the just my kid's first birthday is this weekend. Like there's a shitload of stuff we need to do and I can't do anything. Like it just hurts that bad. It's so debilitating. So I think it was John Wolfe who said the best ability is availability. And I think he's right. I would say the only ability is availability. And um, if you're doing anything in the gym that's putting you at risk of not being able to show up, like I've had a hard time at work, I've had a hard time, like it's just not even close to worth it. There's really nothing, no benefit that can come from putting yourself at that level of risk when the outcome is sort of where I'm sitting today. So it sucks.
Yeah, but I mean the fact of the matter is, it's this just goes to show that we've been here, we've been here too. I mean, this is something that is why we're able to have this conversation. Because it's something that is really real and a something that people deal with often when they are trying to make these positive changes in their life, and setbacks do happen. And the fact of the matter is that sometimes you just have to deal with injuries and avoid making those setbacks turn into long-term problems. And so what we want to do today is just help you navigate the waters. And we can talk about some of the stuff that you've been doing and will be doing in the future to get back on your feet. But then also just like what people can do if they've been in this situation, and hopefully to avoid it. So I guess where we probably should start is with dealing with an injury. So something like this where you've already gotten hurt. So there are the initial steps afterwards. And it's kind of like you talked about, where you initially felt pain. You initially felt like a little pinch, a little something that happened. And understanding that it is so important to not ignore those signals that your body is telling you. That pain is a signal for change, and it is certainly, it's not something that it's not an obstacle that your body is hoping that you can push through.
Yeah, and had I know that, and had I obeyed that on Friday when I carried that tree out of the woods, I may not be where I am right now. Like I,
Hmm.
I probably shouldn't have done that. It was still a little sore. It wasn't anything like it is right now. But I pushed through the pain and carried the tree out and thought I was fine. I've been in the gym to the not uh, to the paying attention to the pain point. Like even on Thursday when I did that lift, like that squat felt okay besides the little pinch, and I moved the weight pretty good. And honestly, had a moment of thought where thought to myself, I could probably get 5 or 10 more pounds. Should I get back under that bar and try it again? Like that's how minor the pain was in the moment. But I knew that like something wasn't exactly quite right, and I shouldn't push it any further. So yeah, I mean, you spend enough time in the gym, you're gonna get hurt. Hopefully, it's not to this degree, and typically there are some signals prior to getting to this level of being horizontal on the couch recording a podcast that it's really important to be listening to. When you feel that pinch, when something isn't quite right, there's a difference between, exerting yourself through the fatigue of an exercise versus something that feels painful. And as soon as that pain shows up, you need to stop and you need to reflect on what's causing that, because the risks are huge and the negative consequences are massive.
Yeah, and it's something that you talked about already, but that checking the ego when something like this does happen, because there is certainly a lot of of frustration and even some denial that can come into your head when something like this happens. And it's really important to understand that, like you said, when when you've been training hard, when you go hard in the gym, things like this are going to happen. But by ignoring them or just like acting like they're not, that these signals that your body are sending you aren't important, it's just an opportunity for things to get worse, where a lot of times, obviously, like there's like the big differences. There are like major injuries that can happen to people. Muscle tears, and we've probably all seen. Well, actually, I don't know if the listeners have the same algorithm that I do, but like bad gym injuries can happen. Like the things where you see it and you immediately know that something terrible just happened. But odds are, the majority of injuries are little tweaks, minor things that happen, and because we don't give them the space that they deserve, they turn into something bigger. And so being able to understand that even these minor pains are important to listen to, it can set you up for just a hell of a lot quicker of a recovery moving forward.
Yeah, so then what do you do if you do get injured? I think conventional wisdom around this, like growing up, was always rice, rest,
Yeah.
ice, compression, elevation. I think some of that's been pushed back on a bit, especially as it relates to how much you rest and how much you ice. So, rest is certainly important. If you're in a ton of pain, you can see me right now, I'm laying here. But some degree of movement is actually quite important to recovery, not to the point of pain, but enough to bring blood flow to the muscle or area that you've injured, because that's critically important for recovery. So my wife's a physical therapist, and she's, always telling me like, are you moving it? And I'll move it and I'll be like, ow. And she'll be like, well, don't move it that much. You don't want to move to the point of pain, but some degree, the rest is critically important, but some degree of movement's important too. And then on the ice front, ice is helpful for reduction of inflammation and swelling, and can help to kind of mitigate the pain to some degree. But too much icing, I think they found, essentially blunts the natural response that your body requires to handle or deal with the injury itself. So if you're just constantly icing, um, you're sort of blunting your body's natural inflammation pathways, which are a critical component of the overall recovery process. So some ice maybe right away to mitigate and deal with it. But after that, I've been primarily doing HIIT, a little bit of movement and a lot of ibuprofen.
Yeah. So, I mean, now that you are, you're kind of like past these initial steps. I mean, there's certainly, there's that mindset shift that now, has to come in. Like, and you're at the point, at least for you, you are in so much pain and discomfort that you're not even thinking about your next workout, right? I mean, like that's something that is, you're not even sure when that's going to happen. A lot of people who have these, kind of like you did with, right away, you get right back in the horse, on the horse. You went out and hauled a tree out of the woods, and that is potentially what led to the major pain that you're in right now. And so for a lot of people, it is shifting, getting that from that mindset shift of why did this happen, or just trying to ignore the fact that it's happening, and looking at all right, what can I control, what can I do right now. And sometimes it is resting, but a lot of times it's just modifying the movements. If you did something to your lower body, you can still train upper body. If if it hurts to run or bike, maybe you can swim. But it's just getting creative with some of the things that you are usually doing and breaking out of those patterns. That can be really helpful and prevent things going from bad to worse.
Yeah, I mean, one of the great things about strength training in general is it's just a constant opportunity to overcome some adversity. Usually that means, heavy weight. In this case, it's a bigger setback than that, right? Like I hurt myself. But there's, I think old Dylan, and I've done this in the past, would have had a lot of fear about losing progress, would have been really concerned about when I could get my next workout in so I didn't lose the progress that I'd earned. I know those things aren't important at this point. It's very much about, how do I get right so I can show up at work and for my family, but also better the next time I show up in the gym. And, I probably knew better going in, but I think the takeaways are very much that if I do want to do something like this again in the future, I need to be better prepared for it. And that this modality of training, like 1 rep maximum, I don't need to be doing it any more than once a year. That's maybe already too much. And that really what's important for me, and what I've been thinking a lot about actually now is there's probably some underlying conditioner issue here at play as well. Like whether it's tight hips or lack of core strength. Obviously those things were going to exist with my limited prep for this amount of weight, but it's giving me a reframe around going back to the mobility drawing board and giving more time and attention to that, because if I do want to do this again in a year, I need to not only prepare for it from a strength and central nervous system point of view, but also from the way that my body is moving.
For sure. I mean, you talked about it. I think it was either last episode or 2 episodes ago. I think where mobility being something that you knew was something that lacked in your programming, and this realistically is probably a wake up call and a byproduct because of that. But the cool thing is that now you have the right attitude about it, and it's not this like, well, why did this happen? You're like, well, I think I know why this happened, and so now what can I do to make sure that this doesn't happen in the future? And so that mobility aspect is really, it's interesting when it comes to programming it, because it's not this kind of like one size fits all. Like when we think of strength training, it's pretty simple. Everybody has the same muscles, right? And now certain people, need strengthening in certain areas more than others, and people have, certain aesthetic goals or athletic goals that require specific training. But generally, for most people, exercise and strength training, you can do a program that's designed for the general population is going to have a pretty good impact on your body. It's going to be good for you. Where mobility is one of those things that really does need to be tailored to the individual, because because everybody is so different as far as tight spots, weak spots, areas that need a little bit of extra attention, and I guess frankly, like, this stuff can be a little boring, and so it's oftentimes skipped or just kind of glossed over. So I guess like it's one of those things that if you can find just like the couple things that are like really good for you, like for your body, it can make a world of difference, and also not like take up a ton of time.
Yeah, I think if you're new to the gym or you're not really familiar with how your body moves or where its limitations are, like, go find a good quality trainer and just have them put you through some sort of a mobility assessment. So, like, I have the knowledge with regards to what I need to be approaching here. I think what happened to me was my ankle mobility is fairly limited, my hip mobility is fairly limited, and I pretty typically high bar squat, meaning the bar rests a bit higher on my shoulders than what people typically would do, especially with higher weights. And so as a result of that, when I got to a certain point of depth in my squat, didn't have the width in my hips to get down, and didn't let my knees track far enough over my ankles, my pelvis essentially collapsed. And when I had that much weight on my back, it put a bunch of pressure on my SI joint. So I think I have some SI joint injury here. And so now, reflecting back on that, I could get away with that at, 245 pounds for 10 reps. But when I had, 335 pounds on my back for one rep, again, to that point around just 1 degree of variation, it presents all sorts of risk. And so not only for next year's 1 rep max, if I choose to pursue that again, but really just for my general overall training and to get the most out of it, I think I've identified that I need to be giving more time to that hip mobility, to that ankle mobility, and my squat will improve because of it. And I think it's really, I don't know that I ever need to squat that much weight again. Like, you can get so much benefit out of doing higher rep squatting. Like, nobody cares how much you squat. It doesn't matter. And so I think for me, I'm probably not going to do a ton of heavy squatting. If I do heavy squatting, I'm going to do it slower, more controlled, with less focus on the weight and more focus on just the adaptation that comes with training in that lower rep range.
Yeah, and so you mentioned a couple areas that are like tight spots for you. You said like you lack ankle mobility and hip mobility, which are fairly common, and things that are generally linked together. But what that doesn't mean is that you need to go and spend 20-30 minutes warming up your ankles and your hips the next time that you want to go squat. It's, first off, that's just not, it's not realistic. It's not all that practical. But and so instead of looking at mobility as this thing to do before exercise, I think it can be really helpful to just make it a daily practice, and just like incorporating 5 to 10 minutes of mobility into your daily routine. And generally, like first thing in the morning or like last thing at night seem to be like the times where they make the most sense. But just like finding a couple of those like spots that you need to improve, and just spending a couple minutes with it every single day is going to have such a bigger impact than taking 20 to 30 minutes before you the next time you squat.
Yeah, frequency is the winning recipe with mobility. Like you really can't do too much of it. So you're right. It doesn't need to be like these dedicated sessions. Figure out, like, if there's one recommendation that I could have that would come out of this. If you don't know where those mobility restrictions are, find a good trainer, have them put you through a mobility assessment, and have them give you 3 to 5 exercises that you're going to spend 3 to 5 minutes on every single day. When I was in a really good flow, my hips and ankles used to be really bad. Like, I'm in a place now where I've actually made some improvement. And when I was really improving it the most, I was doing 3 to 5 minutes of primarily like 90s and combat stretch in the morning, more mobility focus. And then at night, to your point before bed, I would do more static stretching, like a pigeon pose hold. And that's really beneficial because that actually activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is helpful for falling asleep. So I like that prescription quite a bit. Do the more active mobility during the day, and then if you know those sticking points, and there's an opportunity to do some static stretching closer to the end of the day. But you're right, like, this doesn't require a ton of time. It just requires frequency, and it doesn't need to be super structured. Figure out where those pain points are, those sticking points are. Figure out the things you can do to alleviate them, and do them when you can. It could be on the floor at work. It could be in your bedroom when you wake up in the morning. It doesn't have to be like a whole charade.
Yeah, and so I mean, you mentioned a couple really good ones. Like for the hips, I think like 90s are massive. Hip airplanes have been something that have been like really big for me and my hip mobility. One thing I know that I have like generally kind of like internally rotated shoulders. I think a lot of people do nowadays. So something that I really like is like banded pull aparts, or anything that is, helping those shoulder blades, just like kind of pulling those shoulder blades back into position. Now there is, it's kind of like one of those things where we hear, shoulders back and down, and, it's not quite as simple as that. So just by pulling your shoulder blades together, it doesn't mean that you're going to fix all of your shoulder problems. But by, working with resistance bands, even things just like good old fashioned shoulder circles, just like sending your shoulders through a full range of motion. I really think like mobility at the end of the day is just isolating those joints, whatever joint you feel like is lacking range of motion, and just sending it through as much range of motion as you possibly can, and just gradually over time expanding that range. It doesn't need to be a ton of just like super fancy exercises. It is just finding a joint that's bothering you and trying to just over time improve that range of motion little by little.
What's the exercise called where you take a mobility stick or a resistance band in both hands and bring it over your head back and forth for your shoulders?
Like dowel dislocates?
Dislocates, yeah. My shoulder mobility used to be horrible. It's probably my best mobility now. And that is because I took a resistance band, I hung it on the back of a chair in my kitchen, which was in the center of my house at the time. And literally every time I'd walk past that chair, I would do 5 shoulder dislocates with the resistance band. And I did that for probably like 6 to 8 months. And it transformed my shoulder mobility, like significantly. So I'm really into this frequency idea and figuring out how to make that easy for you. Like to the pull-up bar point before, put that pull-up bar in a doorway you walk through pretty frequently. And every time you go past it, hang from it. Do a few pull-ups, whatever it is. Make it accessible. Make it easy. Put these things out in the house so that they're there and they're easy for you to just grab and do.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that. I'm looking at my dowel, my PVC pipe right now. It's just like sitting across the room from me. And I have actually, it's funny. Looking around my room right now, I've got a foam roller over there. I've got a yoga wheel over there. I've got my dowel, and then it looks like a lacrosse ball sitting in the corner over there. I mean, I really do think just taking these mobility tools and just like having them around makes it so much easier to, instead of just stuffing them down in the basement or in a closet or whatever, just having them out and, in places that are accessible, you are so much more likely to actually use them. But I got to ask, I love the PVC pipe or dowel. That is one of my favorites. What's your favorite mobility device or tool?
Yeah, it's the floor. No, but it's probably
The floor. All right.
it's probably the dowel as well. I like the resistance band quite a bit also, but you can do so much awesome stuff with a dowel. And it may be worth us putting together a brief guide, maybe just around some of the key mobility sticking points in the body and a few different things you could do quickly and easily in the comfort of your own home to frequently pursue better mobility in those areas.
Yeah, I mean that's a great idea. I mean, so I think the key takeaways here for people is just to remember that these injuries and tweaks are they're setbacks. They're not stop signs. And the most important thing that we can remember is figuring out what you can do. What can you do with your body currently? And sometimes it's just rest. But if that means if your body needs a rest, there are still plenty of things that you can do mentally to stay sharp. Another thing that I think is a super important takeaway is that mobility is not just for recovery. It's one of those things that oftentimes we turn to it after we should have been using it and after we require it. But it's something that, as far as just like feeling better and performing better, it really should be something that, we should be adding into our daily practice. And then, finally, it's making sure to just be patient with that process. Mobility, like strength, is not going to be built overnight. It's something that is going to take a lot of time to improve upon. But if you are intentional and patient, you are going to see profound benefits. I mean, very much. I love that story about you and the resistance band and just doing those shoulder circles, because if you just give it time, it's compound interest, man. Just like it's just slowly building. And, it's not to say that you're never going to get hurt, because if you push yourself in the gym, these things are going to happen. But you can set yourself up for a much quicker bounce back if you're doing these things regularly.
Yeah, the only concluding point I would make is we've talked about all this through the perspective of getting hurt in the gym. Um, if you're not prioritizing these things, life's going to come and hurt you either way, whether you're doing it through strength training or, closing the trunk of your car.
Oh,
Um,
good
so,
point.
so it's critically important to be both strength training and actively pursuing mobility. They're inherently tied to each other, not only for preventing injury in the gym, but for preventing injury overall. And this episode's very much about like what to do when you get hurt, how to prevent getting hurt, and a lot of it is about that mobility. But a huge part of it is leaving that ego at the door, approaching strength training the right way. The fact that I was able to squat that much weight doesn't mean that I was able to squat that much weight. Like I did it, but I got hurt doing it, which means I wasn't ready for it. My body really wasn't capable of that amount of weight, even though I pulled it off. This mobility is so inherently tied to the strength training itself that it resulted in an injury. So progress these things simultaneously, leave the ego at the door, and you'll find much more success in the gym and just preventing injury throughout the course of life.
Yeah, that's it. All right, let's move on to the question and answer portion of the day. Dylan, I've got one, unless you've got something queued up here.
I've got one too. Do you really like yours?
Okay. we'll go. No. This one,
Mine's,
this was,
mine's,
the,
I'll go. Mine's tied to the season
okay.
and somewhat tied to the episode. And it's should I work out when I have a cold?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Now, what you're going to do and how you're going to do it might change. But yeah, like, moving your body is going to make you feel better more often than not. But, if it doesn't, then stop. It's pretty simple. If you don't feel great and you start exercising and it's making you feel worse, then listen to your body and stop. However, most people are going to use this as an excuse to not exercise, where I think a lot of people are going to feel better by moving their bodies. They're going to get that blood flowing. They're going to get a lot of those good feeling chemicals going through their brains and bodies, and it's just going to make you feel generally a lot better. But if you start moving and you feel like crap and it's making you feel worse, respect that too. This is one of those situations where it's not about mind over matter. But yeah, for the most part, if you're a little under the weather, if you have the sniffles, a great way to knock that out of your body is to get your ass moving.
Yeah, moving for sure. I used to get all this anxiety when I got really consistent with strength training, where I'd get a cold and feel like the week or two that I might take off from like the traditional programming and progressive overload would like severely impact my progress overall, or I would have this huge setback. And as a result, I'd get the cold and I'd show up to the gym with my program and my log, and I'd try to stay on that progression trajectory and go work out super hard. And
Yeah,
that I would not advise at all. That will make you more
totally.
sick. So your initial point is absolutely what's at the crux of the answer to this question. What I should have done and what I do now is if I'm going to stick to that program itself, I'll cut the volume and intensity by 50+%, right? It's about maintaining the habit. It's about moving your body. It's not about progression. Or I'll just think of a lower intensity way to move my body. Maybe it's a few push-ups, a walk, a couple pull-ups. So some exercise is good to maintain that habit to keep your body moving, but I would not recommend if you have a cold, and the severity of the cold matters to some degree too, whether it's just a sniffle or whether you're, really tired and you've got other symptoms. But when that cold comes, listen to your body. That's an opportunity to maybe pause from really pushing yourself. So I wouldn't show up to the gym seeking progression, but rather just find a way to maintain that workout consistency, move the body for all the benefits that you recommended.
So you would not advise somebody to max out on their deadlift, squat, and bench when they're not feeling their best.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, maybe I should take my own advice.
All right, got it. Okay, cool. All right. Let's bring it on home. It is the I Lift a sad song of the week. Dylan, it is my song this week, and this song actually came on while I was in the gym today, and it brought me back to sitting in my living room, illegally downloading this song off of LimeWire. It's Pieces by Sum 41.
Oh, sweet. Sum 41's
Yeah.
absent from the list. I love it.
Yeah, and this one is an absolute banger. So that's going to do it for our episode today, everybody. Thank you so much, and we will see you next time.